I want to point out there's kind of a theme today, and we'll be talking. We just spent some time with Dr. Tripp talking about various issues related to the health of your legs, and how that can impact. How it is related to your diet. I guess is a good way to put it. Diet, exercise, and he said, of course, losing weight would be a help too as well. But there's a bit of a medical theme this morning. In a few minutes, we're going to be joined by a guest. As you know, it's been promoted very heavily over the last several years, and I think primarily most people are aware of it because of the efforts of the National Football League. But it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, and we have a guest coming along at 9:20 this morning to chat with us for a few minutes about that. And in fact, we'll be hearing from them throughout the month. The notion of the goal being, and everyone knows, I've reached an age now where I know multiple people who've gone through this and some who haven't survived. And so, therefore, for that reason, we'd like to talk to people about how we can best start addressing this, and if not cure it right away, which we'd like to do, how we can minimize the illness to the point where people will have a higher survival rate. So that's on the way in a few minutes. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Thanks for joining us this morning. The telephone number at our show, 736-0300, 8 minutes after 9 o'clock, 54. Temperature holding steady pretty much there throughout the morning so far. Came across something while I was getting ready for the show last night. I know a lot of people think that I got the best job in the world because I'm only working 2 hours a day. On the other hand, it requires me to be a little bit more attuned to what's going on all over the world and at home as well, locally, and I've got to be doing that. It's really a 24/7 experience. This comes from Newsmax. Franklin Graham blast group demanding removal of religious sign. I had a news director I worked for many, many years ago who would not allow us to use blasts when it came to telling stories, and his reasoning was, you don't have a cannon. But I think I know what it means. It means he's taking a pretty strong stand or has said something rather tart-tongued. Evangelist Christian leader Franklin Graham is blasting a religious watchdog group for demanding the removal of a post-9/11 God bless the military sign at a Marine Corps base in Hawaii. In other words, the atheists don't want it there. In fact, it's called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. You know, there are people out there who are sitting by, and this is their entire lives, to go around and make sure that there's not a sign at a military installation saying God bless. Get a life. I mean, for crying out loud, what's the problem with you people? And this is what Graham had to say. You've got to be kidding me. That's what he said. You've got to be kidding me. If the sign was put up, it's been there now 14 years, it was put up immediately following the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And here's what's happened. The religious watchdog group wants the billboard either moved to a chapel or removed altogether. The sign stands out, quote, like a tarantula on a wedding cake, unquote. The group's founder, Mikey Weinstein, tells the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. I take it with that name that he might be technically of a particular ethnic group, but he doesn't any longer practice the faith, which was the foundation of what later became Christianity as well. But apparently, no, he doesn't want this there, and so they're going to force it. Doesn't matter if most of the Marines overwhelmingly would like to see it stay, and if their families would like to see it stay. Apparently, on his infrequent trips to Hawaii, well, if he ever even gets there, or if he just saw a photograph of it, it made him, like most atheists, recoil. You know, they double over in pain, and that might be a sign from God. I'm just saying. Might be a sign from God for all of you atheists out there when you suddenly have that nauseous feeling and you vomit when you see the name God. Perhaps it's driving the demons out of your bodies. Speaking of faith, this one is being questioned by some of my friends on Facebook this morning. They're Protestant and they say it must be a lie because some of them, they think that Roman Catholics have tails. But the headline here from a writer by the name of Melanie Eversley, Kim Davis lawyer says she met with Pope. Who was Kim Davis? She was the Rowan County, Kentucky clerk who was suspended from her job. Well, suspended is kind of an odd word. She couldn't go to it for a few days because a judge threw her in jail. She refused, because of her religious convictions, to perform same-sex weddings. And she got pilloried in the media, and of course, among a lot of low-information people, as Rush Limbaugh calls them, saying, I don't know what the problem was, she didn't quit the job. She had actually gone to her state legislature saying, hey, the Supreme Court is going to be ruling on this in a few months. Can you pass some legislation that would allow people like me to abstain from doing the wedding ceremonies for same-sex couples? But, my deputies could do them, and that would be, that would help everyone out. And the legislature ignored her. So whatever you heard reported by ABC, CBS, NBC, the dogs at the New York Times, Pravda on the Potomac, or the Times News was baloney. But anyway, enough said on that. The Vatican has not confirmed that the meeting between Davis and Pope Francis took place, although the Vatican hasn't denied it. As it turns out, both her parents are Roman Catholics and very devout, and she says that because of that connection, word got around through the Roman Catholic circles in this country, so the Pope asked for a meeting. So late in the evening of his visit to Washington, D.C., when he was staying at the Vatican Embassy, they brought a car around the back, and they dropped off Kim Davis and her husband, and they had an opportunity to meet with Pope Francis. And he blessed a pair of rosaries for her parents and had a long discussion with her about religious liberty. Now, these people on Facebook are saying, well, obviously she and her lawyer are lying. Well, the lawyer brought this up. The lawyer said that he was aware of it because he helped broker the meeting. The question is, well, why would they lie? The woman is looking for credibility. Why would she have to lie about this? So I tend to believe it's true. And then I was reading Father Dwight Longnecker this morning, who's one of the best writers in the country on religious issues. If you ever read the website Patheos, you can find his work there. And he was saying that people like this woman are clearly going to be important in our future. And his claim and his point on all of that is this. We are increasingly seeing people, how did he call it? The dictatorship of relativism, which is a statement that came from Pope Benedict, Pope Francis's predecessor. And that is, yesterday you had the leader of Planned Parenthood go before a congressional committee and answer questions for 5 hours. And he points out that throughout her visit there, she never once commented on whether she believed the work at Planned Parenthood was morally right or wrong. She kept skirting that. She would answer questions and deny that they were misusing the money they were getting. She would make the claim that was written by her public relations outfit that this group was out to get them with all of these videos. But whenever she was pressed on whether she thought that killing little babies and chopping them up was right or wrong, she would avoid commenting on that. She'd say, well, I can't tell anybody else what to think. And he said that's the same argument when you boil it right down as to all of those death camp guards in Nazi Germany who used to say, I was only following orders. And his point is this. As we continue to drive faith out of the public square, more and more that type of thinking is going to be used. And that is, well, I can't judge whether this is murder or not. And ultimately, he says this is going to lead to an anarchy in this country, and the result is going to be actually not more people saying, I don't care about all of this or all of that, and just disengaging with right and wrong, but instead is a government is going to have to come in and clamp down on the people. We're headed for an actual dictatorship because we have what is called the dictatorship of relativism, and that is nobody cares about right and wrong anymore. And the ultimate end game of that is the unraveling of our society. And when our society unravels, someone is going to step in and say, all right, I have to put this back together. They may not be nice about it. It may be quite heavy-handed. And so he was saying that we need people like Kim Davis. She's just one out of 340 million right now. But we need people like her to stand up and say, whoa, and we need a lot more of her. I've said it before. There shouldn't just be one person in jail for a few days on this matter. There should be a few 100,000 people locked up in jail on this matter. And then, if you're good about it, and you take it as being a blessing from God, ultimately, you will win the public over. Why? In the early days, when Christians were being persecuted in the Roman Empire, they were often taken into arenas. They would be tied to posts, and then the gates would open, and hungry lions would race out, and they would chew and maul those people to death. But the Christians would continue singing or take their deaths in stride. And you had tens of thousands of bloodthirsty Romans sitting in the stands watching all of this. And at first, they were cheering and screaming, and then when they realized that these people were going to their deaths cheerily, horrible deaths, we should point out, It had a tremendous impact. And you want to talk about how God works throughout history. It had a tremendous impact. And it turned around those people. And within a few years, Christianity was the official religion of the Roman Empire. Now, did it have its problems over the next 1,500 years? It sure did. But I'll say this. We are a better people in Western civilization today because we adopted Christianity than if we had not. Think about that. How would things have developed in the Western world had we remained pagan? Well, there would have been no... And I don't necessarily agree with it because Martin Luther came along and he probably could have... Well, the church wouldn't listen to him, so he had to go outside, and eventually the church reformed itself, but he created a whole other strain of Christianity. But that allowed other people to start saying, well, wait a minute, as long as Luther is over here, maybe I can interpret this Bible. And maybe I'm equal to the king. And if I'm equal to the king, then I ought to have representation. So we'll need representation in the House of Commons and Parliament. And all of a sudden, that'll check the power of the king and of the state. And that led to the Age of Enlightenment. And that led to the American Revolution and the thoughts of our founding fathers. That's why the United States of America is here today. With a pagan culture, if it had come down as a pagan culture over the last 2,000 years, we wouldn't have that today. Now, ultimately, what's going to happen with that Reformation, and it continues, if every man is his own priest, then every man starts saying, well, it's okay if Johnny and Jimmy sleep together. I'm a child of God, and, God loves me, and he made me this way. That's the argument that they try to give you. And ultimately, we're seeing that is the ultimate unraveling. Isn't that the irony of it all? That's the ultimate unraveling of our culture and eventually our post-Christian age. And if we return to that paganism, then all of those benefits we've accrued over the last 2,000 years, and they didn't all start at once. As I mentioned, it was an evolutionary process that came down to us and gave us the country we have today. If we throw all of that out, this is what we're going to be dealing with. There's going to be someone who comes along and says, well, I know you don't believe in God. Why don't you believe in me? I'll go out and kill all of the people you don't like, and I'll clamp down on dissent. I'll take all of your guns away and make sure you're all safe. As long as you follow me, I'll put things back together. Some people say that's the rise of Donald Trump. I don't tend to believe Trump's that guy, but I'm telling you, we are in very perilous times right now. And the fact of the matter is, you may not like what this woman did. You may not like her looks. But by golly, she was the first. Let's hope she's not the last. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, which means you can hear us anywhere all over the world if you're listening online. We've got a guest coming up. We're talking about Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which starts tomorrow, October 1st.